My name is Katrina, and I'm a part of Artists in Quarantine. I started making art probably seriously about 5 years ago. I made art my entire life, but I wasn't serious about it until maybe about 5 years ago, and I felt like I was just, working a full time job, and I needed something a bit more important to focus my time and energy on, something that I felt like was a creative endeavor instead of just like kind of sitting staring at a computer all day. I really started to get into watercolor. It took me a while because at first I hated it because I didn't understand the medium. But since then, I think I've maybe not mastered watercolor, but I have a really good um, handle on how to use it and how it works. And I dabble in different things like ink illustrations, and I work a little bit with gouache, but that one's still tricky, so I kind of use it with watercolor. Ever since COVID came around and we were, put in quarantine, I've been in quarantine now since mid-March, so it's been about 3 months, and I've been doing my best to create as much as I can. It seems like a lot of people are kind of taking on like so many art challenges and like doing so much with their time, and I have done my best. It's very hard to stay productive in quarantine. A lot of my work explores mental illness and stuff like that, so that of course makes quarantine 100 times harder when you're stuck in a isolated space and all you have is your own mind and your own thoughts and yourself there every day when you wake up. So my piece is titled An Isolated Mind, and it was created in quarantine. I wanted to explore what was going on in my head in isolation, and I've kind of grown up in a different type of upbringing. I kind of grew up very isolated myself and have spent a lot of time alone or whatever. I had my mother got sick, and I took care of her for 7 years, so it was just me and her, and I didn't go to school. I didn't go to work. It was just me and her. So I have a lot of experience with being in my head and trying to process what's going on. And this piece is kind of like the culmination of just a lifetime of isolation. And it just happened to come about at this time when everyone was kind of feeling the way that I've been feeling, and it's kind of crazy to see how every artist that I follow on social media was feeling very similar to me. But the piece itself is painted with watercolor, and it's more of like an abstract surrealist piece, which like usually I work with more realistic things, and it's a self-portrait, but it's an abstract self-portrait painted with like fine pigment watercolors that I was really like conscious of how the colors blended and what they did on the paper and with the water. And I just kind of started with a base of water and color and let it do what it wanted to do, and then from there picked out patterns and concentrated on them and defined them more. And to me, when I look at it, it encompasses how my mind was working in quarantine, and there's like different kind of like almost pathways and little spidery veins going out that are just kind of like my thoughts that are just flying through the void. And I was discussing my piece with a friend of mine, and she pointed out that I kind of have a different perspective on this whole thing, in that, I grew up in isolation to a point, so that I kind of went from being in my own little world to the rest of the world kind of coming into my space, which is just different to like, because I feel like I feel like I've grown up with a very unique outlook on the world because I've taken so much time in my head and stepped back and looked at everything because I've had so much time to think about my thoughts and be in my head that it's interesting that seems like kind of the rest of the world is catching up and seeing it from a different perspective. My name is Katrina Stautihar, and you can find me online at katrinastautiharart.com and on Instagram, katrina.stautihar.